You got the degree, you got the job, you got the raises. You're doing everything they told you to do. So why does it feel like every year your money buys a little less? Why does owning a home feel more out of reach than it did 5 years ago? Why do you look at your parents' generation and think, how did they afford all of that on one income? The answer isn't that you're doing something wrong. The answer is that there is a system working against you. And the frustrating part is that the system isn't hidden. It's been studied for almost 300 years. It has a name. And once you understand it, everything about modern money starts to make sense. My name is Tom. I was a regular guy who felt exactly this way. Working hard, doing the right things, and still somehow falling behind. I dug into the numbers until I understood why. And now, I'm going to explain it to you in a way that actually makes sense. If you're new here, welcome. This channel is for normal people who want to understand how money actually works, not how we were told it works. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. Today, we're talking about the Cantillon Effect. And I promise by the end of this video, you will never look at a price increase the same way again. Let's start with a picture. Imagine you're at a massive stadium, packed, 80,000 people. You're up in the nosebleeds, row Z, next to the hot dog smell and the broken seat. Now imagine the announcer comes on and says, "We're dropping $10 million in cash into the stadium right now." Everyone goes crazy. You look up. There's a blimp circling overhead. But then you notice something. The blimp isn't hovering over the nosebleeds. It's hovering directly over the VIP suites, the luxury boxes, the people who already have the best seats in the house, the billionaires, the bankers, the executives. They lean out their windows and just scoop the cash in, armfuls of it, before anyone else even realizes what's happening. And what do they do with it? They immediately spend it. They buy everything at the concession stand. Food, merchandise, everything, at the old prices, because the prices haven't changed yet. They just got richer, instantly, effortlessly. Now, by the time the wind carries a few crumpled bills up to the nosebleeds, to you, the concession stand is sold out. And the prices have already gone up, because the owner had to restock at a higher cost after the VIPs cleared everything out. So you finally catch a $100 bill, but the hot dog that used to cost $5 now costs $15. The hat you wanted is gone. You didn't get richer, you just got diluted. That's the Cantillon Effect. And that stadium? That's the American economy, every single day. Now let me give you the real history because this isn't some modern conspiracy theory. This was figured out in the 1730s. A French-Irish economist named Richard Cantillon noticed something about the way gold and silver flowed through the economy in his time. New money, whether it was gold from the king's mines or coins from the treasury, never entered the economy evenly. It always entered at a specific point, through specific people. And those people, the ones who touched it first, got to spend it before prices adjusted. By the time that new money trickled out to farmers, laborers, and everyday workers, everything cost more. Their wages hadn't gone up yet, but their groceries had. Their rent had. The basic cost of living had gone up. Cantillon wrote, "The people who receive new money first are the ones who benefit. The people who receive it last are the ones who get hurt." That was 1730. That insight is more accurate today than it has ever been. Because today, the king isn't a king. The king is the Federal Reserve. And the new gold isn't mined from the ground, it's printed digitally.
Now let's fast forward to something that actually happened to your wallet. In 2020 and 2021, the US money supply jumped from about $15 trillion to over $21 trillion in just 2 years. That's $6 trillion in new money created out of nothing in 24 months, more than the entire GDP of Japan, gone from zero to existing, just like that. Where did it go first? Not your bank account. The Federal Reserve created that money and used it to buy bonds from the biggest banks and financial institutions in the country. The new money entered the system at the very top. The banks, the hedge funds, the large asset managers, they were first to touch it. And just like those VIPs in the luxury suites, they immediately spent it on assets. Stocks, real estate, land, companies, all at 2019 prices before the rest of the economy had any idea what was coming. From 2020 to 2022, U.S. home prices rose by about 43%. The stock market went on one of its biggest runs in history. Asset prices exploded, not because those assets got better, but because suddenly there was way more money chasing the same amount of stuff. If you already owned a house or a stock portfolio going into 2020, you got dramatically wealthier without doing a single thing. If you were renting, saving cash, doing the responsible thing, waiting until you had enough saved up to buy a home, you watched the finish line move 40% further away in 2 years. Then 2022 hit. Inflation peaked at 8%. The cost of groceries, rent, gas, everything surged. And what did wages do? For most workers, wages went up maybe 3 or 4%. The gap between price increases and wage increases, that gap came straight out of your purchasing power. You got poorer while technically earning more. That's the Cantillon effect. It showed up in your grocery bill. But here's where it gets really personal, and this is the part I want you to sit with. Since 1979, worker productivity in America has grown by about 70%. That means the average American worker today produces about 70% more output per hour than their counterpart in 1979. Real wages, what your paycheck actually buys, grew by less than half that over the same period. Think about what that means. You are producing more. You are working more efficiently. The economy is generating more wealth per person than ever before. But the share of that wealth going to workers has been shrinking for decades. That extra wealth didn't disappear. It went to asset owners. And here's the housing number that makes people genuinely angry. In 1984, the median U.S. home cost about 3.5 times the median annual income. As of 2024, that ratio is approximately 7.6. It takes nearly twice as many years of income to buy an average home today as it did 40 years ago. You didn't get lazier, you didn't stop working hard. The system tilted, and it tilted specifically because of how money flows. Now, I'm not telling you this to make you feel hopeless. I'm telling you this because understanding the machine is the only way to stop being crushed by it. There's one key insight that changes everything. The Cantillon effect punishes people who hold cash. It rewards people who own assets. When new money floods into the economy, cash loses purchasing power. But real assets, stocks, real estate, businesses, things that can't be printed, they rise in value to reflect the larger amount of money chasing them. So the rich don't get richer because they're smarter or luckier. They get richer because they own assets. And when the money printer runs, the value of their assets goes up. The way to stop being on the losing side of this equation is to become an owner, not just an earner. This is why the broad stock market index fund is such a powerful tool for regular people. When you own a share of an index fund that tracks the S&P 500, you own a tiny piece of 500 companies. You own real businesses that make real products, charge real prices, and generate real profits. When inflation pushes prices up, those companies raise their prices too, and their earnings and stock value rise with it. You're not sitting in the nosebleeds catching diluted money. You own a small piece of the concession stand. Think about the last 20 years. The US money supply has roughly tripled since 2000. If you kept your savings in cash during that period, your purchasing power got hit by every wave of inflation that followed each round of money creation. If you owned a broad stock index, your portfolio essentially rode those same waves upward, because you owned assets that adjust to the new money supply. This is why just save more is dangerously incomplete advice. Saving in cash while the money supply expands is like running on a treadmill. You feel like you're moving, but the ground underneath you is going backwards.
Now, here's the other trap the Cantillon effect creates, and it's one almost nobody talks about. If your only income is a salary, your income is the last thing to adjust to inflation. Think about the sequence. New money enters through the banks. Banks lend it to corporations. Corporations use it to buy assets, fund operations, and expand. Asset prices go up. Profits go up. Only then, much later, do wages at the bottom of the chain go up. You are the last stop in the pipeline. By the time a cost of living raise hits your paycheck, your rent has already gone up. Your groceries are already more expensive. Your car insurance premium already jumped. You received the new money after everyone else already spent it at the old prices. This is the mechanism behind that statistic we looked at. Productivity up 70%, wages up less than half that over 45 years. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as the Cantillon effect predicts. The early receivers get the gains. The late receivers absorb the costs. So if you're only a wage earner and you hold your savings in cash, you are getting squeezed from both sides. Your labor's value erodes relative to productivity, and your savings erode relative to asset prices. The only way out of that squeeze is to own something. So what do you actually do with this? 3 things. First, understand that keeping large amounts of money in a low-interest cash account is not safe. It feels safe because the number doesn't go down. But in real terms, in terms of what you can buy with it, it shrinks every year inflation is positive. The safe choice has a very real cost. Second, move your savings into assets over time. For most people, a low-cost index fund is the simplest, most accessible way to do this. You don't need to pick individual stocks. You don't need to buy real estate. You just need to own something that isn't purely cash, something that floats up with the money supply instead of getting diluted by it. Third, and this is the one people overlook, think about your income itself. A salary is a fixed-rate wage in an inflationary system. The Cantillon effect means your employer's revenues and asset values adjust to inflation faster than your paycheck does. If you can position yourself to have some income that adjusts with prices, whether that's owning a small business, freelancing, investing in dividend-paying assets, or just negotiating your salary more aggressively and more often, you reduce your exposure to being the last person in the money pipeline. You cannot stop the money printer. That decision is not yours to make. But you can change where you stand in the stadium. You can stop being the person catching the bills after the prices have already gone up. You can put yourself on the side of the ledger that benefits from the flow instead of absorbing the damage. That is exactly what understanding the Cantillon effect gives you. Not a conspiracy theory, not an excuse to be angry, but a map. A map of how money actually moves, who gets it first, and what you can do to stop being last in line. If this video helped things click for you, if you finally understand why your grocery bill doubled while your paycheck barely moved, hit subscribe. Every week on this channel, we take one of these invisible forces that quietly shape your financial life and break it down so it actually makes sense. Next week, we're going to talk about something just as invisible, but even more personal. It's the reason people who get a raise every single year still feel like they can never get ahead. It's called Parkinson's Law, and it's running in the background of your finances right now, stealing every extra dollar you earn before you even notice. I'm Tom. I'll see you in the next one.